Okay, Nick and Andy, the big news in the Premier League this week was that Nottingham Forest got 4 points deducted for breaching those Premier League profitability and sustainability rules. An independent commission ruled that was the punishment. Forest obviously upset about that. It remains to be seen what they're going to do about that going forward. But it leaves them in the relegation zone as things stand. Luton have moved out. Obviously, there's the potential as well for Everton to face a further points deduction for a second charge after they already had a 6-point deduction. So what that leaves us with, Nick, is a bit of a mess at the bottom of the table, but it also drags in so many other teams into this relegation scrap just above the bottom three. So what are your thoughts on Forest, maybe some of the arguments coming out of that, and then just how that impacts what is always a crazy situation, but now it's looking a little bit wilder when we start to build in these points deductions and appeals and everything else that's going on down there.
It's kind of strange to see it. Obviously, I'm not British, but it's strange to see it come home, because we see points deductions all over Europe, and to have it here feels so real. And I can't quite say what I make of it. So I'll start here. I do like that there's a standard being set. I like that we're going to know that this is what you're not going to do and that there are repercussions for it. It's just weird to feel it the first time. And the only thing I can say for sure is I know they'll find a way to get this decided a little bit earlier than people are saying it's going to be decided, because otherwise, holy cow, as if the last day of the season isn't crazy enough for us.
Yeah, I mean, there's the potential, right? There's a backstop date there for May 24th. There's the date that's been mentioned where all appeals, everything has to be decided by then. So there could be a situation, as you mentioned there, Nick, where, Luton Town heroically survive, and then Nottingham Forest or Everton, if they go down, they could get points back on appeal, and then they could stay up and look. So, yeah, I don't think any of us would want that situation. Keep it on the pitch, etc. But it's just added an extra level of intrigue, right, Andy, to all this, because Burnley, even them winning recently, they're not too far away. They could go on a run and stay up. They've shown enough this season. Sheffield United look like they're pretty much done and dusted. But then when you look just above, obviously, Luton and Nottingham Forest, we have Everton still there, and I talked about the uncertainty there with their situation. But then even Brentford, maybe even Crystal Palace, not ruling them out yet. I mean, it could be quite easy for some of those teams to get sucked in, especially when you look at the remaining schedule for some of those teams. I mean, what's your feeling of the relegation situation?
Yeah, it went from being pretty clear, we thought maybe a week or two ago, and the three promoted teams were going to go down, and now four suddenly. To me, the biggest question about that is how are they going to respond now on the field? Because obviously it's been a difficult season to this point. Otherwise, they wouldn't be, around in the relegation zone and now down in the relegation zone after the deduction. But they really only have themselves to blame for it. I'm looking at the teams that they've beaten this year. They've beaten West Ham, Manchester United, Newcastle, Aston Villa, Chelsea. The only win that they have that you would expect them to have this season is Sheffield United on the second weekend of the season. They have not beaten any of those other teams in the bottom half of the table, in the bottom third, in the relegation picture. They have dropped far too many points in those games specifically, and that's why they find themselves in that position. And so I'm looking at their remaining schedule here. It's not easy, which maybe that's a good thing for Forest, because those are the teams that they fancy beating. But they are... I think they're the favorites to go down now, assuming that this deduction stands at the number of points that it is currently, that doesn't change. I just don't see them kickstarting things, especially under Nuno, the way that they have looked since he took that job at this critical point of the season and saving themselves.
Yeah, you look at the remaining schedule. Everton, not too bad, really. Luton is tough, but again, they're capable of causing an upset, it feels like, the way that they've played throughout this season. And then obviously Forest, it's a really tough schedule. I'm looking at Palace as well. I mentioned them kind of briefly there, but if you look at their remaining schedule, they have a lot of the big boys still to play. And I'd be a little bit worried if I was them too. But Nick, is there any other thoughts for you in terms of this situation? I mean, do you still think it's Sheffield United, Burnley, and then one other to go down?
Yeah, listen, there have been some moments with Burnley, but I don't want to be fooled again. The counterattacking goal they scored the last game was phenomenal, and it just showed you that Vince and company, like, he knows what he wants, and he doesn't have the ingredients to do it. So I hope he sticks around. But I do think it's down to 4 teams. I think there's too much good at Everton. Again, barring further points changes. Brentford is. Do you see who was back on the bench last game? That guy, Brian Buemo and Tony together. When they're together, they're great, and they're going to score too many goals. And Everton's too solid defensively. Palace, assuming health. I think it's those bottom 4 teams, and I think it comes down to Forest and Luton. I tend to think Forest will find their way out, and I'll tell you why. I think they have enough attacking pieces to be different any given week. So whether it's Alongo, Wood, Gibbs, White, and Origi out there together, or they flip it in a different direction. Nuno scares me a little bit, but I got to remember Nuno Wolves too, and they knew how to attack and how to bring guys off the bench. So I do think it'll be the 3 promoted teams going back down.
Wow. Andy, you agree with that?
No, I'm gonna ever so slightly go with Forest. We have waited all season, and this is not a newly promoted side either. This is not it's been chopped and changed a lot over the 4 transfer windows they've had since they've come up to the Premier League, sure. But you would expect to see some kind of continuity, some kind of familiarity between players now at this point. And every time they play, it's disorganized. And I think, look back historically, teams that fight relegation, teams that avoid relegation, they have kind of that siege mentality. They have everybody pulling in the same direction and understanding exactly what the objective is. And I have never at any point this season, under different managers, I've never gotten that vibe from Forest.
And it just feels like they've been spinning for 2 years too. Yeah. Like to sign so many guys that were going to go away to AFCON right after you change. They did that before, but that happens right after you change your manager. It just feels like they've never got their feet in the earth.
Yeah, it's been poorly managed really since the promotion, right? Because we talked so much about they signed 22 players brought in. How is that going to affect the team? Of course it's going to affect the team. The entire team has never played together, let alone been at your club. And to expect that to just hit the ground running, it's no surprise they struggled a bit last season. And it's no surprise that without real proper direction going into season 2 that they've done it again.
Yeah. I think Burnley and Sheffield United are going to go down. I think Burnley just giving themselves a bit too much to do. And I'm going to agree with Andy. I think Forest are going to go down. I think just too chaotic, not sure what they're doing. Luton, on the other hand, do know what they're doing. And if they get a little bit healthier with injuries here down the stretch, I fancy them to cause a few upsets and stay up and use the power of Kenilworth Road. And I'm going to use what has become my catchphrase now. I am mad about the Hatters. And I said it at the start of the season. I think I was the only one of the 3 of us who said they're going to stay up in the preseason predictions we did. So like Nick said earlier, I'm going for that. I'm sticking my flag in the ground, and I'm going to say Luton are going to stay up, but it's going to be really, really tight and go down to the final game of the season. So head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest on the relegation scrap down at the bottom end of the Premier League table. So many teams still involved. Let's see how it all pans out, but it's going to be really exciting until the final whistle blows on the final day of the season.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.